Whiskey Bravo 3, Golf Bravo Foxtrot.
Whiskey Bravo 2, come back with the call sign again.
Whiskey Bravo 3, Golf Bravo Foxtrot.
Roger, Roger. And what's the name, please?
The name here is Fred, and I'm in Pikesville, Maryland. Go ahead.
Roger, Roger. Fred, sounding good back this way. What's your radio?
Radio here is the Yaesu Fox Tango 1000 MP, running 50 watts into an AL811 at about 300 watts onto a Delta loop, about 40, maybe 45 feet up. Go ahead.
Ah, well, you're really getting out. That looked about 10 over. About 10 over right there, sir. Roger.
Roger, Roger. Thank you very much. You're every bit of 20 over solid on all your peaks are 20 over, your valleys are 20 over, and everything's 20 over, and you're sounding good. Go ahead.
Oh, Roger. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. We try pretty hard. This is an older Yaesu 990, the highly modified coming and going, Roger, on the transmit side and on the receive side. We have worked quite hard to flatten the receive bandpass out to make everything as correct as possible as far as folks being able to hear what their radios sound like, Roger.
Roger. Well, it's doing quite well. You said that's a Yaesu you're running there also?
Roger, Roger. It's a Yaesu FT990, about 30-something years old.
I don't think the RF cares how old it is. If it can get out and do what it's supposed to do, it sounds good. Okay, you take care and have a good day. It's cold outside here, and I don't intend to go out into it. But anyway, I can listen on the radio. WB3 Golf Baker Foxtrot.
Roger, Roger, Fred. Sounds good. You might think about maybe just a click lower, just a click less on the bottom end, EQ-wise, just not quite as much bottom end, but I mean, as good as it is, but it could be just a tad better with just a click less bottom end. So if you want to hear it, if you go to YouTube and do a call letter search for Kilo Charlie 9 Victor Kilo Victor, that will take you to the Qso-Vlog page of ours, and then on that, once you're there, look for a session that's called My Group AIRCHECK 11119. My Group AIRCHECK 11119. Roger?
Yeah, Roger. By the way, what's your name?
Name here is Jim, Juliet, India, Mike, and we're located just across the street from Louisville, Kentucky. We're just across the Ohio River from Louisville. Roger?
Yeah, okay, Jim. Jim, just for my information, what was that you were telling the other gentleman you were just talking to about the radio or something you were running there, and it was a one-tube wonder or something like that? What was that you were saying?
That was when I was a mere child, more years than I care to think about. But I think I was 12, somewhere around there. And my mother was a secretary at an Air Force base for some brass, 3 or 4, guys, and one of them brought her. She would be telling them about me and my younger days of radio and all that stuff. And then it was mainly like recording. I would produce commercials and stuff. And so one of the guys happened to have what's called a one-tube wonder. I don't know where he'd gotten it, but he had gotten it and then performed certain surgical corrections or modifications to it that made it even more of a one-tube wonder than what its stock would be. And the tube was a 117L7, 117L7, and that is the filament. There was no transformer in it, and the filaments were 117 volts. Roger?
Yeah, holy smokes. Are you still using that, or is that something in the past?
That was when I was 12 years old, about years ago.
Yeah, okay, well, it sounds like it was really great. I wish I had been into this when I was 12 years old. Quite a wondrous hobby. Okay, Jim, you take care, and pleased to make your acquaintance this evening here on the 11th of January 2019. Happy New Year to you, Jim.
Roger, Roger, Fred. Now I did have quite a few transmitters during my younger days. Probably one of the best ones was an old marine radio telephone. Now this is back a long time ago when they used frequencies like 2638 kilocycles, 3638 kilocycles, 2182 distress, just above the broadcast band. And so this, I found a crystal that would pull this radio, marine radio telephone to transmit on 1610, I think it was, 1625, 1610, somewhere in there. And it had about 40 to 50 watts. And I'd never had a radio transmitter that would put out that kind of power. And this was designed for a boat. Well, you know, a small ship, boat, whatever. And, you know, on those boats they have limited mast heights, so limited antennas. So what they would do, they had a base load coil inside the transmitter that you could load out what antenna that you didn't have. You could load out on a coil and make the antenna resonant. And so I would play with that thing, and it was only 50 watts. So, you know, and I was making these critical adjustments and very fast. So sometimes I wouldn't even bother unkeying the microphone. I would just zing down the coil, and I'm looking at field strength meter, and then I would tap it to wherever I got max field strength. But all the time the transmitter was keyed. And then I happened to notice that the tips of my fingers were like burnt. And the RF had burnt the tips of my fingers, Roger.
Roger. Oh, boy. Sounds like you were really into it, getting burned and not even realizing it. Yeah, well, okay, well, I have some horror stories I could tell you about fooling around with these amplifiers over here, and it letting me know, don't fool with me when you just been using me, because I'll knock you across the floor. Go ahead.
Roger. Well, there was one time when I used to go to my friendly Army and Navy store, and once when I was there, they had this electronic item. It was I think it was a German tank transmitter. A German tank transmitter. And so I bought it and brought it home, and I was getting ready to key it up. I had a dummy load on it, and I got the power supply going, and it had been converted from 12 volts or 24 volts to 110 volts. So I had it plugged in, and it wasn't working. And I was curious why it wasn't working, and I was trying to, you know, they had what's called laced cable bundles in there. They had like fishing line tied in knots holding these bundles together, and so I couldn't trace the wires. So I had me a small set of fingernail scissors, clippers, you know, not just normal clippers, but they were more like scissors, but very pointed and very small. And I had one of those around my thumb, and then the other one was around my forefinger. And so I'm cutting these fishing line bundles so I can spread these wires out so I can follow them, you know, trace them. And I must have cut into the high voltage, because the next thing I knew, I was turned around backwards to where I was. It was a hot day in Florida, and I was leaning over the transmitter, and I was sweating, and you know, so I had good contact with my chest. And when my scissors hit that high voltage, boy, it was just a perfect contact around my thumb and forefinger. And you know, next thing I knew, I was backwards to the table and sitting there, kind of vibrating and trying to figure out there was something wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I realized I wasn't breathing. my lungs had gotten paralyzed from the high voltage. So I don't know why, but I just started pounding myself in the chest just as hard as I could, and what that did was it broke up the muscles in the chest so they could start to breathe, and I could pretty soon, like in about 2 minutes, I could go just barely, ever so slightly of breath, and this went on for like 10 minutes, and it got a little stronger, but it took quite a while to recuperate from that. Roger?
Yes, indeed. Boy, I tell you, KC9VKV, WB3 Golf Baker Foxtrot. Well, those voltages in these units, especially back then, they were very, very lethal. They're just as lethal now, but I think folks have a better sense of, being aware and of those high voltages and things like that. We don't get in there. But when you're young, you don't think about things like that, and you just go in there to get it, and it's waiting to get you. Jim, real good to talk to you, but I'll let you go. I see you like to leg shoe a lot, and I do too, but my feet are getting cold. I think I'll get out of this basement here. WB3GBF.
Roger, Fred, 3 Saturday, sir, and I enjoyed it. You have a good evening, and maybe you get a chance next Friday to drop back by. We start at 3:30 Eastern and go to 5 Eastern, and AIRCHECK. And so if you want to hear your audio, if you go to YouTube, we'll be posting this in the next couple of days. You go to YouTube and do a call letter search for Kilo Charlie 9 Victor Kilo Victor. That'll take you to the Qso-Vlog page, and on that page look for a session called My Group AIRCHECK 11119. My Group AIRCHECK 11119. 3's Fred. We'll catch you later. This is KC9VKV.
Yeah, one thing before you go, Jim. Is there any particular QSO I would want to listen for, or a time, or anything like that where I can pinpoint this QSO?
It would be towards the end. We wrap up at 5, so it's about 5 minutes till. So it'd be towards the end, the last 25% for sure, Roger?
Yeah, Roger. Well, I'm going to do that as soon as I warm up a little bit there. Good talking to you, Jim, and I certainly will look up My Group AIRCHECK on YouTube, and just as soon as I get back down here in the office there. Take care, Jim. Have a good day. WB3GBF.
Roger, Fred. Now, it will be a couple of days. It does take me usually a couple of days to get it uploaded and checked in, So I would, in the next couple of days, go up and do that because, I say it'll be a couple of days before I get it up. I usually get it up sooner, but, I just don't want to, have somebody be looking and it's not there. So I just say within a couple of days I'll get it there. Roger?
Yeah, okay. So what I will find if I go there today will be previous QSOs, then is that right?
That's right. It's about 400.
Okay, Roger. Take care, and real nice talking to you there. Take care.
Roger. Now, we do have one that is a list of all of our QSOs, 400 of them, and if you go to that and open that up, we have those in a certain sequence. Art Bell is number 1, and gosh, I'm in trouble now. The microphone man, you know who? Bob Heil. Oh, boy, I'm in trouble now. Bob Heil, number 2, and then a bunch of really great guys on after that. So, that would be what I would do. I would just check those out for right now, Roger.
Yeah, okay. Really, I will do that. Take care.
Roger, Fred, 3 said away. And whoever it was that said Bob Heil, thank you so everly much.